I gave 15 years to build our family business, but my brother got the new truck as an engagement gift. I quit, and the company fell apart. I was the mainstay of Wilson Family Plumbing. My name is Alex, and I am 35 years old. When the majority of my pals left for college, I remained to assist Dad in growing the company. I gained first-hand knowledge of everything, including how to unclog obstinate drains, repair leaky pipes, construct intricate systems, and handle upset clients at 2 in the morning. During crisis in the winter, I took over the company. Earl, my father, progressively returned to a managerial position. In his garage, Dad began with a van and a toolkit. We now have 8 trucks and 12 staff. Or rather, they do. There was no magic or serendipity behind that growth. I gave up weekends, sweated for thousands of hours, and paid close attention to establishing our name in the neighborhood. Each and every favorable review, each and every recurring client, every recommendation I had personally made sure they were happy. 5 years ago, my younger brother Travis joined. He still behaves like a youngster who is compelled to work in the family business. At the age of 28, he frequently arrives late, takes long meals, and leaves tasks unfinished. It's astounding how many consumer complaints I've had to handle following his trips. Although I'm available for emergencies around the clock on the weekends, Travis forgets his phone. Dad always has an excuse. Ready somehow, he's still learning the ropes, and not everyone has your natural talent. Alex, there were always the warning signs. New hires. I trained frequently, received promotions ahead of me, after I put in place a new scheduling system that resulted in a 30% increase in efficiency at our corporate meeting. Travis received recognition for his support of the program. When I proposed diversifying into business contracts, Dad said it was too dangerous. Travis made the same suggestion. 6 months later, my father referred to it as innovative thinking. It became impossible to overlook the discrepancies in wealth for years. Dad had promised me a partnership, lingering ownership interests that never came to pass. In the meantime, I found that Travis was earning $155,000 more a year, while being less experienced and having less responsibilities. The 2010 vehicle I was driving had 180,000 miles on it. Travis and Dad, they drove around in cars that weren't even 3 years old. Loyalty was important. I told myself the family comes first, that one day Dad would see what I had done. In every way, I was mistaken for months. My truck had been experiencing frequent breakdowns. The suspension was shot, the transmission was slipping. Also, there were rust holes in the cargo area that allowed water to enter during the rainstorms, damaging costly equipment. Following a particularly severe malfunction that cost us a significant client. At last, Dad acknowledged that we needed a new car. I was evaluating the damage to my old truck that evening. Dad took 2 beers and came out to the garage. Leaning against the workbench, he handed one to me. It was like the old days. For a while, prior to Travis's employment with the organization, when I would resolve issues with Dad, remember when I taught you how to change the belt? On the old Ford, his grizzled face softened with a rare smile. You couldn't have been more than 12. I nodded as the recollection came back to me. You let me do the whole job while you supervised, told me I had the steadiest hands you'd ever seen. On a kid never seen anyone take to plumbing like you did, Alex. Natural talent. He looked at the truck instead of me. While he sipped his beer slowly, this business, it wouldn't be what it is without you. It made me feel valued for a time like I seldom ever did anymore. I felt a connection to him before returning inside. He gave me a shoulder clap, leading me to ponder why those epiphies had become so infrequent when it really mattered. Why couldn't he see my worth in front of Travis in compensation? In business decisions, I looked into my alternatives for weeks, locating the best offers, organizing all the paperwork, and striking a balance between cargo capacity and fuel efficiency. I even made financial arrangements with our long-standing bank for the following 10 years. This truck would serve as my mobile office. I wanted to do it correctly. Dad invited all of us to dinner. That Sunday, Travis brought Jessica, his fiancée, who had just gotten engaged after only 8 months of dating. Mom prepared a feast. Dad looked unusually happy when dessert was finished. He got up and yelled for everyone to pay attention. My heart soared. Perhaps I reasoned he would finally recognize my efforts, perhaps even make public the collaboration we had discussed. Rather, he produced a set of keys that were fastened to a silver keychain, bearing the business's emblem. He gave them to Travis with the broadest smile I'd seen in a long time. To help you start your new life, son. The new company truck is yours. I had them add all the upgrades you wanted. Consider it an engagement present from your mother and me. The ensuing quiet seemed to last forever. Jessica clapped her hands with joy as Travis smiled smugly. My emotions went unnoticed by them. While averting my gaze, my mother busied herself cleaning plates. At last, I was able to speak, but my voice was constricted. Dad, we discussed that truck for the service calls. I handle Travis doesn't even do emergency work. Dad dismissed it with a wave. You can keep using your current truck for a while longer. Travis needs to project a professional image. Now that he'll be taking over more client relationships, besides, you know, how to keep that old one running. You've always been good with repairs, without even feigning gratitude. I watched Travis dangle the keys while discussing how he may personalize the paint job. His newest hobby was the truck that should have been mine, the one I required for my real job. Something eventually snapped inside me on the way home in my squeaky old pickup. It was more than just the car. It was neglected, underappreciated, and taken for granted. For around 15 years, it was the knowledge that Travis would always be the preferred son, and I would always be the dependable workhorse, regardless of what I contributed. I had trouble sleeping that night. I looked through job postings, something I had never given much thought to, before I gave Jack, a former co-worker who had gone to work for a rival company, a call to inquire about their business. I was astonished by his response. Alex, you could write your own ticket anywhere in the county with your abilities and connections with clients. What really has kept you at your dad's house for so long? For the first time, I understood that my own mistreatment had been made possible by what I had assumed to be loyalty. I had forgotten my own value, since I had been so accustomed to being underappreciated. Jack stated that his business required a skilled expert to oversee their commercial branch, precisely the chance that my father's business had refused me. I painstakingly documented everything I handled throughout the course of the following week, comprehensive guidelines for our systems, customer preferences, maintenance plans, supplier connections, and emergency procedures. I included remarks about each significant client to the customer database. I refused to become like them by undermining the company. However, I also didn't want to give them a reason to phone me after I left when I got to work early the next Monday. I put an envelope on my father's desk casually. Late, as usual, he came. An hour later, his look changed from bewilderment to incredulity as he opened the envelope. 2 weeks' notice. Alex, have you got a joke? He leaned back in his chair and inquired. I calmly and professionally expressed my choice. I only touched on the vehicle incident in passing, preferring to talk about the partnership's repeated unmet promises and my need for professional development. Brighton Plumbing Services was the company I had accepted a position with. Dad sneered. You'll be back in a week. What we provide you here is unmatched by them. Isn't this just a tirade over the truck? He didn't even bother to inquire about my wages. He might have understood that I would be earning almost 40% more with benefits, and that I would have a clear route to partnership. In just 2 years, the company was instantly inundated with the news. Instead of his typical smug expression, Travis's face flushed with dread. As he cornered me in the supply room, he growled, You can't just walk away. Who will be in charge of the West Side contracts, or the upkeep of the hospital, or the calls for emergencies? His self-assured exterior momentarily broke down. He lowered his voice to a whisper. Dad has been preparing me to assume leadership in the future, but half of what you do is unknown to me. I didn't bother to become familiar with the systems I am. This is not what I'm ready for. I was shocked to hear the admission of inadequacy. However, it was no longer my issue. He had been content to claim credit for years. While I completed the work, I answered, I'm sure you'll figure it out. You have a nice new truck to drive around in. After all, unexpectedly, those 2 weeks were freeing as many of my duties as I could. I taught others. I presented their new technicians to important clients. I painstakingly recorded everything in a 3-ring binder. With the big marker label, Essential Operations, I put the binder, my business phone, my credit card, and the building's keys on my father's desk. On my last day, Dad hardly noticed that I was gone. He remained certain that I would return in a matter of days. Mom contacted me that night with tears in her eyes, pleading with me to think again. She stated, Family businesses have ups and downs, but we must remain united. I politely mentioned that despite always being underappreciated, I had remained loyal to them for 15 years. This was not a rash choice. It was past due by 15 years. It was an eye-opening first month at Brighton. I was referred to as the best plumber in the county by my new boss, Kevin, to both clients and employees. In addition to being heard, my recommendations were put into practice. When I suggested a more effective method for scheduling business maintenance, Kevin gave me the tools to implement it and urged me to make it a company-wide system. Then my first big test arrived for months. Brighton has unsuccessfully bid on the Lakeside Corporate Park contract. I knew I had important inside information. When Kevin said they were trying one last time for years, Wilson Family Plumbing had provided building maintenance, and I was fully aware of their priorities and the problems they had faced. Knowing that I could almost assure Brighton of winning the contract, however, it felt wrong to use such information, a breach of confidentiality for clients, even though in theory I hadn't signed anything that would have stopped it. I thought about my possibilities. Through a restless night, I got everything from Brighton: that my family business couldn't show respect, just compensation, the chance I wanted to demonstrate my worth, but not at the expense of my morals. I entered Kevin's office the following morning and gave him the following explanation. Although I was unable to provide precise information regarding lakeside systems, with my knowledge of comparable properties, I might assist Brighton in developing a more robust general proposition. Kevin looked at me for a while. He finally remarked, "You know, most guys would have just used whatever advantage they had. Alex, I hired you precisely because of your integrity. Despite this, we were able to secure the contract based on our bid, rather than insider knowledge. More than any simple win could have, that moment solidified my position at Brighton. Most unexpectedly, I completed my assignment within a fair time frame. Travis had messed up a simple job. Therefore, there would be no more midnight calls, no more working on the weekends, since Dad had made unrealistic deadline promises without first talking to me. I started hiking on Saturdays, got back in touch with old pals, and even started dating someone who wasn't worn out by my frequent work emergencies. The consequences at Wilson Family Plumbing, meanwhile, were immediate and serious. Their Yelp rating fell from 4.8 to 3.2 stars in only 2 weeks. When they found out I had left, customers who had expressly asked for me were incensed. Missed meetings and duplicate bookings resulted from the breakdown of the intricate scheduling system I had developed, which no one else fully understood. By week 3, the texts began to come in from Travis. First, how can I view the maintenance records for the hospital? Next, from Dad, where did you save the Peterson job? Warranty details. I just replied with succinct, businesslike instructions for the paperwork I had left behind when Travis tried to manage the quarterly maintenance at Riverside Medical Center, our biggest commercial client. A serious situation arose. A storage area flooded as a result of his failure to close a major valve. Their contract was immediately terminated by the hospital, resulting in an annual loss of $180,000. 2 seasoned technicians left that same week, complaining about the unorganized schedule and a lack of direction. One of those techs, Tom, who is currently employed by a rival company, told me what transpired. After that, after having a total breakdown at the office, Travis screamed that he was being set up to fail, and threw tools across the workshop. He said that his father had thrown him into the deep end without the necessary training, and had expected him to take on my responsibilities right away without ever giving him the chance to learn. Tom explained how Travis eventually passed out on a bench with his head in his hands and muttered, "Alex made it seem so simple." I had no idea. I didn't bother to find out. It seems that Dad simply stood there looking pale as the company he founded fell apart all around him. The weight of real responsibility was causing the Golden Sun's facade to crumble. The tone of my family's text drastically shifted. "Please call us," which evolved from "We need to talk" to "The business is in serious trouble." Mom began making calls every day, her messages getting more urgent. Jessica, Travis's fiancée, even reached out stating that he was so stressed out that he was having trouble sleeping. I kept my distance and concentrated on succeeding in my new position. In my first 2 months, I closed 3 significant commercial contracts and received a hefty bonus. I was finally able to save enough money for a down payment on a small property, thanks to my raise and manageable work schedule. I also purchased a new truck for myself, not a corporate car, funded by the results of labor that has been adequately compensated in our industry. News spreads quickly. In passing, suppliers who dealt with both businesses brought up Wilson Family Plumbing's demise. One person said, "Heard your dad had to lay off 3 more guys while delivering parts." It is disheartening to witness a long-standing company experiencing such difficulties. I remained dignified in my work. In spite of the temptation I never disparaged my family. On a Tuesday night, after we had not spoken for 3 months, my father called. There was a change in his voice. Older, defeated Alex, we must speak in person. The company, it's not good. We decided to meet on neutral ground at a coffee shop, halfway between our houses. Their physical changes were startling. When Dad and Travis showed up, Dad was lighter. His normally flawless appearance had become unkempt. Travis appeared to have gone weeks without sleep. His eyes had dark shadows under them. He has lost all of his usual swagger. They outlined the terrible circumstances. Revenue is 60% lower. There were only 4 employees left. Their business loan was jeopardized by the bank to cover costs. 3 trucks have already been sold. Travis had been really proud of the new truck, sacrificed to keep the lights on. Gone too. Dad had even taken out a mortgage on his home to help finance the struggling company. Alex, we made mistakes. Dad said, his voice cracking. I hear you were taken for granted by me. I'm paying the price. Now I witnessed my father crying for the first time in my life. Travis couldn't look me in the eyes, and instead gazed at the table. A folder was pushed across the table by Dad. It contained a partnership agreement that included full operational management, a significant pay raise, and 45% ownership, please. He said in a whisper, help us preserve what remains the previous. Alex would have seized the chance, eager to be acknowledged for the first time after longing for it. However, the day my truck was given away, that version of me passed away. Rather, I simply stated that I had no interest in going back from day one. I had discovered a location where my abilities were appreciated, not after a disastrous failure. Compelled acknowledgement. I clarified, I'm not trying to punish you. I just realized how valuable I am. At last, I tried to earn something that should have been given to me freely for 15 years. Show respect, just compensation, recognition. I refused to go back at last. Travis's voice was hollow. Until you departed, I had no idea how much you were doing. Running service calls seemed simple to me. He hesitated and swallowed hard, thinking, I believed Dad was giving you preferential treatment, completing all of the crucial work for you. I was mistaken. I took no pleasure in their misery. Rather, I provided what assistance I could, names of potential qualified plumbers, for their reorganized company ideas, for simplifying in order to continue operating with a reduced operation, suggestions for clients to focus on in order to restore their reputation. I informed them, this isn't about retaliation. I didn't go out to harm you. I departed because I was worthy of better, Wilson. Family, plumbing is still in business 6 months later, but is a shadow of what it used to be. Dad has taken a big step back and is thinking about retiring early instead of delegating everything. Travis has been compelled to learn the ropes and handle service calls himself after losing the majority of their commercial clients. They now only have 3 trucks and concentrate on residential work. It's awkward when we first see each other at family get-togethers, but we eventually settle into a new routine. After seeing my new home and learning that I had been promoted to commercial division manager, Mom finally stopped trying to guilt trip me into going back. Even Travis, who occasionally texts me technical questions that I respond to politely, has grown to respect me, despite his reluctance. I didn't wake up with a knot in my stomach for the first time in my adult life. I've changed from the fervently devoted son who never received the approval he sought. The physical strain of plumbing work wasn't the biggest weight I've ever carried. It was the emotional burden of attempting to win the respect and affection of those who didn't value me. Retaliation isn't always the reason to leave. It can be the sole route to self-respect. At times, I've discovered that the best form of retaliation isn't seeing other people fail after you've left. It is succeeding so thoroughly that your value is determined by your absence. Kevin told me last month that he wants me to manage his second location, which he plans to open in the nearby county. He claims that I could eventually buy him out and turn it into my own business. I find myself visualizing the fleet of trucks, organizing the service area, and creating the logo in my head. Wilson Blue was the only color painted, not with malice, but because I'm creating something that is genuinely mine. At last, thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around